Hello, you're tuned into episode 99 of the Steam Deck podcast, Flip Screen Games weekly podcast, all about Valve's portable PC powerhouse. I'm your host, Stephen Radford, joined as always by my very good friend and co-host, Mr. Max Wright.
Good afternoon. Oh, no, wait, ahoy, ahoy. Sorry, I forgot about that. Can I just quickly take the intro of this show to just call out ChatGPT?
Yeah, why?
Earlier, I was messing around with ChatGPT because I've never actually used it before. We had a whole long conversation, me and ChatGPT, about what games I might like, what Castlevania or Metroid games I might like. I tried to get some recommendations. It just gave me games I already played. But anyway, then I sort of started asking it, tell me about the Steam Deck podcast. You know, who hosts it?
Mm-hmm.
Gave me two random names I don't know. And I was like, no, they're not the hosts. Who hosts the Steam Deck podcast? And it gave me you and Pete. And I said, who else hosts the Steam Deck podcast? And it was like, gave me another name. I was like, no, who else hosts the Steam Deck podcast? And then it took me like, I don't know, like 10 minutes of me going, no, who else hosts the Steam Deck podcast? And at no point did it say my name. So
don't be offended, Max. It's trained on old Google data from like 2 years ago. So you probably weren't on the show then. You know, don't be too upset. We love having you here, Max.
Thank you. It's nice to feel a part of something.
Exactly.
I'm anti-AI again now. So
I use ChatGPT every day for my job and GitHub Copilot. So it's great.
Oh, okay.
I love it.
All right, fine,
I spent all day today converting SQL queries into doctrine entities. So that's a really fun little bit of non-video game stuff there. But anyway, today we're talking about potentially some more technical stuff. We're going to be interviewing someone called Chemical Flood from the C.A.G.E Discord channel. And he's going to tell us all about Abandonware, right, Max?
Yes, Abandonware. That's been a hot topic at the moment. Deadpool and Wolverine recently came out, and there's been a big influx that I've seen of people saying, how can I play the Deadpool game that was delisted, I think 4 years ago? It came out in 2017. License ran out, got delisted. The only way to get it is to go on a key site and pay loads of money for it, or pirate it, essentially. But the Discord, the C.A.G.E Discord exists too. It's a big collection of Abandonware titles, where you can just go on, download them, and I've personally sort of downloaded 4 or 5 of them, run them on my Steam Deck absolutely fine. And I recently played through the whole of Transformers Devastation, not from that Discord channel, but that is an Abandonware title, a Platinum Games title again that came out in like 2015, got delisted because the license ran out. And had a great time with it, and it's a shame these games don't exist. So I think it's great. We wanted to sort of find out, how it works, but also highlight the work that Chem is doing, because I think it's a great project, and we like using our Steam Deck in various ways, and we like playing games that we can't play anymore.
Yeah, and he also spoke about the Stop Killing Games movement, his thoughts on remasters and remakes, and how that kind of ties in with the grey area that is Abandonware. It's a really great interview. The audio's not the greatest quality. We've done our best to clean it up, but I really think it's worth a listen. So please persist and have a listen to what Kem's got to say about Abandonware.
Hello, Kem. Welcome to the Steam Deck podcast. Thanks for coming on.
No problem at all. Thanks for having me.
No worries. So we're just going to sort of talk a little bit about Abandonware games, as we would have said in the intro. So question one for us, or for you, is for those who don't know, why don't you tell us a little bit about what Abandonware is?
Yeah, of course. No problem at all. So Abandonware is technically seen as a term where games are no longer available to legally acquire. So licenses have expired, or, for example, they're just no longer for sale anymore. So if you think of a game from your childhood, you go to Steam, you look online, you won't find a copy of it for sale anywhere. And that usually falls under Abandonware term because the licenses have expired and it's no longer sold.
So at that point, it's essentially, almost essentially fair game, right?
Yeah.
Now, the issue you said there is that it's not on Steam, so that obviously means that they're not available. You can't go and buy these games anymore, right?
Yeah, so even if you look to more third-party sites, for example, you still won't find them. When games first do get delisted, what you'll find is some of them. So a few top of my head, for example, the Crew keys and Deadpool keys, for example, they are available via third-party sites. However, you could be paying up to £500 for a single key.
Christ.
So people are literally scalping them and reselling them because they're not in production anymore.
The evil nature of humanity, eh? Yeah, I have seen that with the Deadpool game. When I myself went on to have a look for it, I couldn't find it, and that is what eventually led me to finding your Discord. So the Discord you have is C.A.G.E. I forget what that actually stands for. Do you want to remind me?
Yeah, okay. So C.A.G.E is just an acronym. It stands for Chem's Abandonware Game Emporium. It's not the best idea of name, honestly, but it's just something that we come up with at the spot. But we weren't expecting it ever to be so popular. The server's only been open for just over a year now.
Oh, sure. Okay, well, that's quicker than I thought it would be. So why don't you tell the listeners a bit about what you've been doing as with this Discord channel to preserve these games?
Okay, so a lot of the times what will happen is that we'll get requests in for games or things that have been lost to time, and then we'll try and find locations of them. For example, we'll hit up a lot of charity shops or sometimes thrift stores and try and find physical copies. If we can't find a physical copy, then that's when you go a little bit further out and go, okay, well, what existed digitally? Did anyone that we know own this on Steam? Can we do anything with those files? And just try and get it to a point where we've got a preservation of this going forward so that in 5, 10, 15 years' time, there's still a copy that exists and can be obtained by people.
It's interesting that you'd sort of go to charity shops and find these games, because I often will find an old game in a charity shop and think, oh, that would be good to sort of put on the PC. And then I think, well, actually, there's not going to be like a key with it. So is there like a more involved process, like having to crack the games to make them sort of run easily? Because you can, for those who don't know, you literally just download the game from the Discord and you can just run the EXE. You can do that in Steam on the Steam Deck as well, and the game just works as is. Is there sort of a more involved process like cracking?
So a lot of it is making sure that the DRM has been removed. There's some DRMs which from yesteryear in the early 2000s which are quite dangerous. So there's one that's called Star Force, for example. They don't run nicely on newer operating systems to a point where they will brick your computer if you leave them intact.
Oh wow, okay.
So Star Force is a really terrible one. So the primary thing with that is to make sure that we've took all of the DRM out. And the easiest way of making sure it's removed is by making the game portable. So it's already been installed. There's nothing to worry about. It's just a case of download the game, extract it, and then you can run it. And there's no problems with it then, absolutely whatsoever.
What's the process of doing that? Are there any like specific tools? Have you made your own tools to do that?
So usually 90% of the time with older games, unless they're an older game such as like a Codemasters title, they don't even require regedit. So it doesn't require registry entry. So providing you've installed the game properly and it doesn't require a key or anything like that, 90% of the time, providing you've removed the no CD check from the executable, essentially what you can do is just then launch it with no problems. That makes sense? So probably the best way of wording it would be by if you install a game to a folder, and then if you give that folder to another computer, providing you've got a no CD executable, it should run anywhere.
Okay.
Now,
And if you have
a few changes to this that need to be done sometimes, but it's quite rare.
And if you have the CD, it's as easy as just removing the DRM to sort of make a no CD EXE, or do you have to sort of change something in that?
It depends a lot on the protection. Some are easier than others. So some of them can be a nightmare. Obviously, anything by Denvu is pretty much uncrackable. Same with VM Protect. That's a nightmare sometimes. And then you've got other ones like old black box Need for Speed games, for example, like Underground 2, Underground 1, Most Wanted. A no CD check for that is literally just make a file and call it foobar and put it inside the directory, and now suddenly it will launch with no CD. So
strong security from these AAA developers, then.
Yeah, so it does vary quite a lot.
Yeah, of course. I just wanted to. Those of you who haven't been on the Discord yet, or maybe aren't aware of this, there's an awful lot of, because it's a lot of licensed stuff. There is a lot of like Marvel stuff and a lot of the Need for Speed stuff, and there's a lot of like big blocks of series that have just completely disappeared. Are there any that you particularly like to collect more, or is it just whatever's available?
So a lot of the games that we have at the moment have mainly come from suggestions, and at the moment we are more racing game focused at the moment. But that's because we started with racing games. So obviously the suggestions is always going to be, well, we started off with driving fans, so obviously they're going to request more driving games. That's just the way it is. Obviously, we picked up a few odd titles along the way, but we don't tend to get them suggested as much. People mainly want car games.
Yeah.
And with car licenses being the primary issue for the reason of games being delisted, that's another reason why we end up picking them up. Because, for example, I think some of the newer Dirt games have only got 3-year licenses.
Wow.
So they tend to get delisted pretty quickly.
We noticed that with the Forza Horizon as well. Like we presumed it was a music license, but someone wrote in and said actually it's often the car licenses with these games as well.
The problem with car licenses is that each game will vary independently, and depending on when you got that license, also depends on who's in charge. So you might have someone 1 year CEO who's like, yeah, that's fine, take the car, we won't charge you anything for it. And then you'll have a new CEO who might be against street racing or might be against having their cars damaged. And then they put the price up, or they make it unaffordable, or they want a commission basis license. So they want a percentage per every game sold, or per how many games sold, for example. So it can change very year to year. So when it gets to a point when licenses can be renewed, sometimes you're speaking to a completely different team and it's impossible to do it, or they want too much money for how old the game is.
So sometimes when you're making these racing games, you're sort of making a game that only has a shelf life of 3 years sometimes.
Yeah, it all depends on how much developers or how much the publishers actually speak to the car manufacturers and see what they can get. Because you'll notice there's periods of times where Forza Horizon games came out and they had no Toyota in them. Then they had to release Mitsubishi as a separate pack later on. Mitsubishi had like a small issue where they didn't want them to be in games or anything. And then at the end of all that, at the very end, another one that you might notice is Porsche. Now, for the longest time, Porsche had, I believe it was a 15-year license with EA. And that's why we had games. So one of the reasons, I'll explain it a little bit more. So when Porsche Unleashed came out, I think it was in 2000, one of the caveats was, yes, we'll make you a game for Porsche only, but we want you to be exclusive to us.
Okay.
And then that's why you'll notice that older games like Gran Turismo, non-EA titles as well, like Forza, none of them had Porsche in to begin with. That's why Gran Turismo had RUF, had RUF. It's simply because EA held an exclusivity deal with Porsche. Now, that only expired fully, I think, about 2010, 2015 time. But I think they started that off in the early 90s, or mid to late 90s, sorry, that contract was signed.
I'll be honest, I didn't know cars were this involved. I'm not a big car person. I thought you were just a big Marvel guy. That's the only games that I've seen the most. So, Ken, tell me, you've the Discord's been around for a year. You are sort of talking about going around to charity shops and finding these older PC games. Have you been at this just for this year, or is this something you've been doing for a while and you started the Discord to collect it?
Okay, so a little bit of backstory. We started off in 2020 during COVID, and it was not intentional at all.
Okay.
So what happened during COVID was I really wanted to do a playthrough with Pro Street because it was one of my childhood games, and I'm one of the people that absolutely love Pro Street. Now, at the time, back in 2020, the Pega didn't exist yet. Pega mods. And Pro Street wasn't really seen too kindly still in the community. There was a few people that loved it and bought it for consoles and stuff, but it was pretty much still unobtainable on PC. I did get hold. I basically had hold of a CD copy, managed to find one. I bought one. I installed it. The game didn't work. It was broken. I heard about you needed patches and stuff to improve it to patch 1.1 and everything like that. And a lot easier way of doing it was speaking to Origin. So I had the CD key physically in the box, and I spoke to Origin at the time and was basically like, hey, come on, like, is there any way I can purchase this game? Can you put it on my account? Can you do anything? I just want the version where I can download it so it's a bit more patched and a bit more better. And they basically, in the nicest way possible, told me to go and find it elsewhere.
Okay.
Because they couldn't do that.
I mean, that's a good green light as any, isn't it?
Yeah. So I ended up spending a few months at the time, back in 2020, trying to find, going through older articles, older websites, trying to find patches and stuff for Pro Street to try and get it functional. And I eventually made it functional. Once I had a functional build of Pro Street, I didn't want to go through the process of trying to do it again. So I made a local copy on a USB stick. A few friends found out about this and they also wanted it. So I made them copies too and was like, here you go play it then, that's fine. And it got to the point where people that weren't local to me wanted it. So I put it on my Google Drive and was like, here's the link. And it got to the point where I was noticing more and more people on Reddit were asking about the game and wanted to play it. So I just posted the link live and was like, here, if you want it, go get it, sort of thing. Here it is, go play. And it sort of just snowballed from that. And then people asking me for other Need for Speed titles. And I was like, well, sure, why not? Let's do that. And it just grew from that, basically. But all of this started from Pro Street and EA telling me to get it from somewhere else.
Supervillain origin story right there.
Have you always been technically minded? Were you like, was it obvious to you what you needed to do to get it to work, or did it take a lot of research to figure it out?
So I've worked in the tech field for about, how long have I worked in the tech field for now? Well, about the age of 12, I used to take apart computers and stuff.
Oh, wow.
Parents would bring back broken things from like the tip and the rubbish dump and recycling plants and stuff, and I've taken them apart, fixed them, and then so I had a nice little thing going when I was 12. It was getting absolutely ripped off, but what I used to do was bring like PS2s back from the tips that were broken back in about when I was about 12, or PS1s, and I'd fix them, get them working again, and then sell them to Game for about £30 a console. When it was
Nice.
probably worth about 150.
Yeah, dumpster
At
diving.
12 years
Nice.
old, that was amazing. Like, I didn't really
30 quid
understand
back then was a game for you, right? That was probably, yeah.
So I was able to get rid of these PS2s and everything, and then obviously, buy PS3 games or controllers or other things like that. So I've always been technically minded, sort of thing, and I work in tech now. But it's one of those things where I don't know how to explain it really, but it's one of those things where it's always been in the back of my mind, so I understand what I'm doing with it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course. I think if anyone else had decided they wanted to play Pro Street and EA told them to fuck off, basically, this project probably wouldn't have existed. But because you had the know-how, it's probably easier for you to turn it into something that it is what it is now.
Yeah.
And I noticed like there's been a huge spike in I found Chem on the Steam Deck Facebook group because I was posting links to the Deadpool game or just to the Discord really, so that people could play the Deadpool game, and there was another one, Marvel Ultimate Alliance. And there's been a lot of people asking about Deadpool and Wolverine Origins at the moment because of the release of the movie Deadpool and Wolverine. So you must notice like other spikes in activity like that. Are there any other sort of events or movies or games happening that have sort of driven either a rush to the Discord or are people requesting a certain type of game, or is this sort of the first time you've had that kind of sort of the spike and you being the guy to give the people the drugs they want?
So we've had a few spikes before, and there's a guy actually in our Discord called Mitchell. He's a YouTuber who does like retrospect videos and all the Need for Speed titles. He approached me when the server first opened and was like, "Hey, I found your stuff on Reddit. Like, can we do anything, sort of thing?" So I spoke to him a little bit, and then he ended up like linking my server in his videos at the time.
Cool.
So that gave us a lot of influx from the Need for Speed community who were wanting to play these old games that they were seeing videos on, but obviously there was no safe place at the time to download them. And it went on from that. I'd say the next big influx, another one was the Crew. That was a big influx of people.
That sort of was a big headline delicensing, really. We've seen a lot of these games just disappear quietly, and you go and look for them on Steam. Whereas this is probably the first one I think that caused a bit of an uproar, and we'll get onto the effects of that in a little bit as well.
That's absolutely fine. Another one would be probably Test Drive. Actually, I had a lot of increase from. So when Solar Crown was announced, obviously Solar Crown was announced. A lot of people were excited and looking forward to it. But you'll notice there's no other Test Drive games for sale.
Okay, so is this like a big reboot?
Yeah, so Test Drive Unlimited 1 and 2 have been delisted now for a fair number of years. So obviously there's a lot of people who've come to me to pick up Test Drive Unlimited 1 and 2. to then go and play the games to then decide if they want to play Solar Crown or not. Because there's a few
Okay.
people, I imagine, who probably weren't of age or understood at the time when Test Drive 1 and 2 came out. So now they're, people who are in like the mid-teens and like look and heard a lot of reviews about it, sort of thing, probably want to try the older games, and now they're able to, if that makes sense. We had a nice big input from that as well.
Yeah, nice. I'm sure there's probably a lot more of these sort of boosts as more games die and more people want interest. Yeah. I did notice when I was sort of looking around for other games as well as looking through your Discord server, there are some titles that are missing. Just the three that I could think of, the three sort of licensed platinum games that got delisted: Transformers Devastation, which I recently played, Legend of Korra, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Mutants in Manhattan. They are abandonware. They fall under that category, but you don't have them on your Discord server. So I was just wondering, is there like a way you choose that isn't just sort of being requested? Are these games that you have no interest in, or are they games that you just can't source? Like, why are there certain things omitted, or is it just like you'll get to it when you get to it?
A lot of things are that I'll get to them when I get to them. We tend to go off a suggestion list, so the more times a game's suggested, the more I'll look into it, sort of thing. So if there's more people, because my time's limited. I only do this as a hobby. This is completely non-profit. There is no money made from this whatsoever. It's so I don't want to put time into something where I'm not saying that all games shouldn't be saved, because all games should be saved. All games should be archived. That's the whole idea of the channel, just to archive everything.
Sure.
However, if I've got 100 people asking for a game that everyone wants, and I've got one person who's suggesting a title that they're the only person who suggested it, my time's limited.
Sure.
I can't. It's not that I don't want to. It's just hard to pick a game where, if it's not been suggested so much, to focus my time on when there's games that have been suggested that I could do in the same time. Because the last thing I want to do is upload something and then have it never downloaded, or no one's interested in it, sort of thing.
Yeah, of course.
And there is a few games where I started off where it's games from my childhood. So sometimes I'll think of a game and be like, "Oh, let's see," and then I find out it's Abandonware, and I'll just see a random upload that probably no one's ever suggested before, and it's just because something I've been remembered about, and I've like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I remember that game."
Yeah, it's your channel.
I've encountered that quite a lot, like wanting to play old games. Like I wanted to play The Sims, the original Sims, on my Steam Deck, and having to do the kind of no CD patch in order to get that to work. And then there was the Blade Runner game that eventually kind of got a remaster and a re-release by C.A.G.E. Like, how do you feel about remakes and remasters? If a remake or a remaster or a re-release on C.A.G.E, for example, would come out?
Right. Okay. So, remakes, remasters, releases on G.O.G. I'm going to surprise probably a lot of people now where I say I highly support them. And I'll explain my reasoning behind it. So, let's take a game like Need for Speed, for example. So, let's just say we get to the end of the 10-year cycle and the licenses have expired and the game's due to be delisted. Now, if they approach these companies and they say to them, "Hey, look, we want to renew all these licenses. We'll pay to renew them again for another 10 years, for example. What's it going to cost us?" They're going to get given a price. Now, for them to relicense this 10-year-old game, bear in mind, they're going to pay a lot of money to do it. And then their costs overall that they're going to get back are not going to cover the license cost. Bear in mind that 90% of the people that want to play it will already own it. And the people that do want to play it are only going to pick it up when it's 90% off in Steam, because it's a 10-year-old game. So when a company goes out their way and makes a remaster or a remake, what that allows them to do is not only pay for the licenses, but it allows them to sell the game for a near full price again. And what that then means is that the license renewal is justified for another 10 years, because more people are paying it again. All their fan base that had the first game, most of them, I'd imagine, would pay full price for the new game that's been slightly remastered. I mean, who here hasn't owned at least one more version of Skyrim, for example? You see what I mean? It goes a long way. So a lot of people will ask me, for example, why haven't I got Hot Pursuit 2010 from C.A.G.E? And the reason being is it's being remastered. And in a publisher's eyes, I'm not saying this is true because I don't know, but in my eyes, in the publisher's eyes, the only reason to go and download an older version of a game that's been remastered is to avoid paying for it.
Yeah.
Which then breaks the rules of Abandonware.
Sure, yeah, and also
falls under piracy.
You want these games to exist. You want people to be playing these games. You want these games to be successful, so they keep making more. So by giving a free version, giving people that avenue, you're, if anything, just sort of taking away from the thing that you love. You're dissuading developers from keeping these games alive or bringing these games back if you're just going to give a version of it anyway. So I think I think you've made a good decision there to take these down or not choose not to do them if there is a remaster available. Yeah.
Yeah, so if any game is remastered, they are delisted, they are taken away from C.A.G.E. It also goes without saying that it's never happened yet, but if a publisher wants to approach us and be like, hey, we don't like it, take our games down, we take them down, no questions asked. It's just one of these things where we haven't been asked, so they've stayed up.
So you've never personally sort of come into any legal trouble or had any sort of legal ramifications? No? Okay. And I assume from what you've said, you're the fact that the game has been abandoned by the developer and therefore there's no money changing hands, you're not taking any money, you feel like there's not like a legal grey area you exist in because
right. So I'm not going to beat around the bush. Abandonware is piracy. There's no ifs or buts about it. There's no way you can word it where it isn't. It technically still is. It still does fall under the piracy. However, in my eyes, for a game to be true piracy, it needs to either, one, harm company profits, which the games aren't sold anymore, it's not harming the profits.
Yeah.
Two, you need to be profiting from the company's IP. We don't make any money from the games, they're listed completely free of charge. We don't have any hidden subscriptions, there's no Patreons, there's nothing like that. Everything is free to access. So we're not taking money that should be the developers either, if that makes sense. So we're not taking any money away from the publisher. And the third one is damage. So obviously, if you're there and you're going, oh, screw this company, they've done this, they've done that, for example, then publicly harming them that way isn't a good idea either. But our retrospect has always been that, if a game's for sale, go and buy it. If someone suggests a game and it's still for sale, we'll point them in the right direction. We have an FAQ based where a lot of people will come in, for example, and ask for the old Grand Theft Auto trilogy because they don't want the new remaster.
Yeah.
That is actually still sold on Rockstar's website, and we have a link to it just so people can go and buy the original.
Okay. Oh, so there's for the Rockstar launcher, not for Steam though, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
So it's been taken away from Steam, but it still exists for the Rockstar launcher.
Interesting. Okay, I didn't know that.
Not a lot of people do. It's quite hidden, but it's nice just to be able to go, hey, look, you can still buy this. Go and buy it. That's even it's been remastered, so we wouldn't upload it anyway. But at least you can go buy the original here if that's what you're after.
Sure. Steve, were you going to ask something a second ago?
No. I was. Well, I guess the next question: are there any kind of titles that are very elusive to you? You've not been able to preserve it. Maybe you have a copy of it, but you've struggled to preserve it. I know you mentioned certain DRM that you can't crack. Is there anything else that's kind of you've struggled with?
So there's a few. So there's a few games which used to exist that you just can't find anymore. I mean, we do have a list to them. So I can pull that list up at some point if we needed to in the future, for another future time. But one of them that stands out, I believe, it's a Charlie's Angel game called Angel X. It's a weird puzzle type game, and we've actually been messaging the original developer. He's got a copy of it or anything like that, and the original person who worked on it, sort of thing. And even he's like, "Hey, I don't know where it is, but I'd love to get a hold of it again." So even he's trying to find a copy of it too, sort of thing. So we are in a position where we can look at certain games. We are trying to find all of them if we can. But there is a few that still elude us. And I mean, then you've got the other side of it where you have all the game files, but you can't do anything with it. So there's another revival project that I'm not part of that deserves a mention, which is the Dark Spore revival, which is in EA version of Spore, but it's like more of an MMO type thing.
Oh, that's cool.
Bringing Spore back. Wow.
So Spore still exists on Steam and everything. That's not a problem. But Dark Spore is a completely different game.
Okay.
There is a Discord server for that one, but it's not something I'm personally part of, but I have been following the project. But that's a lot different because as much as you have the launcher on the install disk and everything else, in the most of the game, I think, was server-sided, which obviously is now turned off.
Did Darkspore exist already then? Sorry, this is a game that existed they're trying to bring back, or a game they're making based on the original Spore?
Right, so Darkspore is a game that used to exist.
Oh, wow, okay.
But it was delisted by EA many years ago.
I missed that ever coming out. That's interesting. So that's still a work in progress then?
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that went offline because of like server side stuff. Have you like worked to revive any other servers, like bringing the crew back online with third party servers or anything like that?
Yeah, so I am currently part of the TCU, which is the crew team, and also the Crew Unlimited Discord server. So we are trying to get the servers revived for that game as well.
And is that through you're trying to get the devs to revive it, or are you trying to revive it like by kind of reverse engineering the servers?
So we are making a third-party server software for it. So basically, what that is a server emulator. The campaign isn't trying to change the laws respectively as such. So we're not trying to force the devs to do it. We don't want them to come out of the woodwork and reverse the changes and put the game back online. That's not what we're asking. So the whole, which I'll bring into now slightly, is the Stop Killing Games campaign.
Yeah, go into that. Introduce us to that.
The whole idea behind that is to not make the developers come back and do a 180 and revive the crew. The crew's just the start of it. What we want to do is to stop it happening to any more games going forward, which I think is probably the best thing, because a lot of people might not realize this, but a server emulator like this takes a ton of time, a ton of resources.
Oh yeah, someone's got to run it.
There's no code that's really available, so it's all built from the ground up, sort of thing. And there's a lot of games out there without the Stop Killing campaign that would require too much work for people to take on, and games would become lost because of it, sort of thing. So if we can, the Stop Killing Games campaign is more to make people, make the publishers, put the games into a position where they can stay online, or not. If they are going to turn the servers off, they at least patch them so they can be played offline.
Yeah, or I guess open it up so the server software is available, similar to something like 5M, for example, where if you play GTA, you might want to play on custom servers. Rockstar now own 5M. Presumably, they're going to continue supporting that moving forwards. Maybe we'll see 6M when GTA 6 comes out, that kind of thing.
I wanted to. You've mentioned the crew a few times, and the crew working on the crew servers. What is it about the crew specifically? I mean, now I'm reading this question out, I realize you're a big racing game fan, so that's probably what it is. But what is it about the crew's delisting specifically that spurred the kind of response that you and the rest of the people that are involved in Stop Killing Games to sort of like start the petition, bring people together, when we've sort of seen games in the last, 5 years, like Babylon's Fall, Knockout City, or even the original Overwatch, that are just completely inaccessible now. You can't access the servers, you can't play them. So why the crew of all games?
Okay, so Babylon's Fall, I'll be honest, I'm not too sure of that one. It's not one I've really heard about or heard mentioned or had mentioned to me before.
Shit game anyway, apparently, so...
Knockout City, I believe, recently has been offline patch.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that. Oh, bad research.
The original Overwatch, on the other hand, I understand people's annoyance with Overwatch 1 being turned off, but at the same time, Overwatch 2 replaced it. It's pretty much very similar, and it was free to play. So you can't really be too mad at them. If they charged full price for Overwatch 2, then yeah, there'd be more of an argument for it, I believe.
Which they did originally, right? It was originally a paid game, and then it went free to play.
Which I think this is why they changed it, to try and be like, hey guys, sorry.
years.
It's kind of a similar deal with Destiny 2. Like, people were really sad when that went offline, but they've moved a lot of that content from Destiny now over to Destiny 2, so you can kind of play it there.
But going into The Crew, though, none of the sequels to The Crew are anything like The Crew 1. It's a completely separate game. A lot of people don't like The Crew 2 for the simple reason that they played The Crew 1, they heard The Crew 2 was announced, and they bought it accepting like a sequel as such, like a continuation of The Crew's 1 story, and it's just non-existent. Other than sharing the name, there is no similarity. Well, the name and the map, there's no similarities. There's no mention of the previous game.
That's strange. Ubisoft games are all the same.
The story. It's more that they've just recycled the name, truthfully, which is sad to say. So the first game is a lot different. It has a huge following because of how different it is, and the story it has.
It's not even that old a game, is it? It's to just be lost.
Be its 10-year anniversary
really?
in December.
Bloody hell! Okay, all right.
I'm pretty sure I remember playing that on PS4. Is that the one where the controller flashes blue and red when like the police chase
when you have the police after you? Yeah, I believe
that was really cool. I
cool.
like
that is cool.
Yeah, it released originally in 2014 December, I believe.
So the petition for Stop Killing Games, that's more than just the Crew, then, right? That's just about in the future you want.
The Crew is the game that started it. However, it's not the game that the Stop Killing campaign is about.
Okay, right. That's just about gaming in general. The petition is a EU only, so I'm assuming you're attempting to reach out to the European Union. Does that mean that you're trying to sort of change the law or get them to enforce a law that Ubisoft aren't sort of following? What is the aim of the petition?
The aim for the petition basically is, I think, to try and get the government to tell Ubisoft that they need to do it. So they can't sell a product that has a shelf life effectively. Because I think one of the laws behind it is that a game is supposed to have, if your shelf life in a game and plan to turn the game off, at least in UK law, you're supposed to advertise on the box that, hey, after this date, the game won't be playable anymore. So
right,
it's the fact that they've set the game up to be obsolete and then pretended that it won't be.
Yeah, of course, that makes sense. Yeah, because it's not like, I mean, you've had cases like where after the fact things get patched in, but you can still buy the box that doesn't say on it. I think it was Crash Team Racing, the remaster of that, came out without any mention of microtransactions in the box, and then a patch later introduced all these new microtransactions. But a new user would walk down to game or go to Tesco's or whatever, pick up a copy of that game, look at the back, and not see that.
Yeah.
So you've sort of been misled in buying that there's things involved that aren't there. Same way that you could, maybe you could walk in and pick up a copy of The Crew in a CEX right now, get home, put it in, and nothing happens.
Yeah.
Well, I remember buying Titanfall 2 and enjoying that game, and then seeing Titanfall 1 in like CX for 50p and thinking, oh, this would be great to play, not realizing that it's like entirely online and you can't really play the game anymore. So it's completely pointless. So I very much would have liked some heads up on that.
Get your 50p back.
Yeah. Hey, at least I got a case that I could use for another game. But Kem, are there any games that you think people would be surprised to find that are either lost or unavailable?
Yes, there's actually quite a few of them now. So EA recently went on a massive delisting spree, and F1 2021.
Wow, okay.
3 years old, actually permanently lost now at the moment.
Oh, really?
It was delisted with Denvu still active, and the DRM has never been cracked.
Yeah. Okay.
That DRM is everyone hates.
And that's a recent game as well,
and it causes slowdown. I remember when the Sonic Origins trilogy came out, it had Denvu in it.
Well, that's one of those DRMs that specifically gets called out on Steam, the Steam listing page now that it's included in there because everyone absolutely despises it.
Yep. And there are games that add it in after the fact, I think. The Monster Hunter games added it in after the fact, and it broke them on Steam Deck for a good week, which is, annoying.
If you could, is there like any dream title you'd love to see revived? Even if it's like it has that DRM on it, and you can just suddenly crack it, what would be your kind of dream title?
So do you mean a game that currently has a DRM enabled?
Or any game that's kind of lost that you'd like to find. I know you mentioned the Charlie's Angels game. I don't know if that's something you specifically want, but is there like a dream game you'd like to see?
So I suppose a dream one I'd like to see come back without DRM would be The Crew, because the DRM is still active on that. The DRM for The Crew is slightly different though. It doesn't stop the game being played. It just stops the game from being modified.
Okay, so it just it identifies the files have been changed and then tells you that you can't play.
Oh, I see. So you wouldn't be able to sort of.
There's a lot of people who want to get like car mods and stuff on the go ready, and they're unable to, for example, or there's certain things and bits and pieces in there that can't be changed because you can't modify too much because of the DRM.
There's doing like a checksum against the files to make sure. Yeah. Well, hopefully you can kind of figure out a way to patch them in, maybe through like a separate app. I know that's how 5M always had to do it, was like basically run in the background and patch things in once the kind of executable had launched. Before we wrap up, Ken, like what do you have a Steam Deck? If so, like what are you playing on your Steam Deck?
I actually don't have a Steam Deck, surprisingly. I do plan to get one in the future, just mainly just so I can support C.A.G.E more with it. Because there's a lot of things come in where I look at and I'm like, oh well, I'm getting asked questions on it and I don't have one to test or things like that. I'm going a lot of third-party knowledge that I've picked up and then trying to put a guide together just so people can play the games easier. So far it's gone okay, but there's still a few things that I do need to look at.
Have you found a lot of people come asking to play games on Steam Deck? Is that like a really popular platform?
A lot more recently. I mean, it used to be the old Need for Speed games, which I've always had the commands in ready, so people have always been able to play them. But then there's a few games where I'm not able to. If that makes sense. So there's a few games that require registry entries. Sorry, is the best way to explain it. So the ones that require registries, I'm not 100% sure on how I can get them to work on Steam Deck yet. It might be one in the future where I'll end up doing myself if I eventually do pick up a deck, or it'll be trying to find a small team of people who have Steam Decks who can test these things out and find a solution, and we can get a guide written together so more people can experience them.
Well, we have a good community, so if anyone knows how to sort of get to get whether it's through Proton tricks or something like that to get these games working that require a reg file, let us know in the Discord or in the comments or something like that. I know the game you called out specifically was Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions to me. So if you're a big Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions fan, get in our Discord and tell us how the hell we can make it run on Steam Deck.
is on the keyboard right now.
That's the only person
to play it. Yeah,
the only person I thought of when I was asked the question, other than you, Steve, obviously. But maybe we'll ask him more formally when the episode's up. I'll at him directly and see what we can do for you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Lovely. Well, thanks so much for your time, Kem. This has been really interesting. More so to learn that the big white whale game is a Charlie's Angels game. Honestly, that floored me, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a strange one for sure. But at the end of the day, it's one of these things where all we're trying to do is get all the games that we can archived and saved. It's not to make them all easy download. It's not to make them, and have a full community where people can download everything. It's just to make sure that games aren't lost.
Absolutely.
Because there will be a few titles out there that when people ask for them, there's no record of them anymore. We're getting to the age where CD copies are reaching lifespan. So, you can go to a shop and find a CD and plug it in and it won't even work anymore.
Yeah,
a lot of them are hitting the age where they're running out. They're hitting shelf life.
We need to preserve these games because I know these companies aren't going to do it.
Yeah. Ken, before we go, remind everyone where they can find you. We'll post links in the description.
The best way to find us is if you go onto Discord and look for a server, just type in C.A.G.E or go to discord.gg/C.A.G.E.
Awesome.
We'll have a link to that in the bottom as well. So yeah, guys, go check it out. Download some fun games. Let us know what you're playing in what Abandonware games you guys are enjoying.
Awesome. Thanks, Ken.
No problem. See you guys again.
Very much. See you later. Bye-bye. So there we go. We've learned a lot about Abandonware titles and about Stop Killing games. Were there any games in particular that Ken mentioned that you were interested in?
Well, that Charlie's Angels game really caught my attention.
Really?
If that Destiny's Child song's in there, I'm all for it.
Probably why the game got delisted, right? Beyonce probably has something to say.
No, I bet it was Michelle because she couldn't handle it. You see,
I lay him up, you just knock him down, don't you? Brilliant.
No, there was a great interview. I did enjoy the crew, as I said, but games that I have been interested in playing, as I mentioned during the interview, they've kind of got revivals. I really, really enjoyed playing that Blade Runner point and click game. It made it on our top 100 games list, or if you haven't listened to the Flip Screen Games podcast, it was a couple of weeks ago as well, worth a listen. But yeah, really great interview. Don't forget, you can check out the C.A.G.E Discord and the Stop Killing Games movement if you're interested in the links in the description for this episode. So make sure you go check them out. And before we go, I need to thank our Patreon producers for the month of August. They are, of course, Arnold J. Rimmer, Christopher Valenz, Gabriel Hassemeyer, aka Sobi, Snakugo, Steve Sumpy, Susan Likes Cats and Also Boobies, Ty the Dude, Voodoo Vic, and Wakahula. Thank you all so much for supporting the Steam Deck podcast and our sister shows, the Flip Screen Games podcast and Nintendo Noise. If you want to check out those other shows, join the Discord or check out everywhere else we are on the web. You can find all the links over on our website, flipscreen.games. Come and chat with us. And I'm sure Ken will be in the Discord chatting away with Team Linux and everyone else over there to try and figure out how to get that Spider-Man game running on the Steam Deck. So if you know how to help, make sure you come and join the Discord.
Absolutely, yeah. Come help us out. Come help him out. Let's just save games.
Yeah. And next week is episode 100 of the Steam Deck podcast. We'll all be here. We've got a special episode lined up, so make sure you tune in for that one. And we shall see you next week for episode 100.
Bye-bye.